Welcome to the Retro Blood.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Retro Blood. As we start off a brand new month here in the month of August, talking about all kinds of dead and buried creatures, all stalking around your neighborhoods and your houses, because the Retro Blood is returning for Dead and Buried Month Part 2. It came from the grave. Up first, if y'all like interesting zombie creatures that are reanimated for a strange guy who likes to make up faces in the dead, if y'all like towns where supposedly nothing ever happens bad in this town, even though every horror movie we have something happen in a very small town that happens bad all the time. And if you like a town of reanimated corpses, this is the review for you, brother, because the Retro Blood is starting off Dead and Buried Month with Dead and Buried. Like that? Like that?
I like what you did there.
Yeah, a little bit of both. So, J. Alison, James Kline, what's happened, Alison? How was your stay at the Coastal Porter's Bluff?
Something like that, yeah. I actually like this little town.
Yeah, I mean, it was a nice little town. You know what I mean? You go in there, you take your pictures, okay? Mm-hmm. You get killed. No, first you get, what I'm trying to say, you get glamored by a hot blonde. Yes. Then you get killed by the townsfolk, and then you wake up as a working at the gas station. I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, and it seemed like the diner was really good too. So
yeah, a little fun in there. So, but yeah, starting off the zombie. I kind of like this month because we picked out some pretty good ones for this month. We'll give you all the schedule at the end of the episode. But what I like about this month, and I don't think this was our intention, but it kind of worked out that way. We're going to be talking about like zombie, style movies, okay? But they're not your traditional zombie movies. All right, maybe the one at the end is, but like these next two movies that we have coming up, they're not exactly like the norm of dead things just rise from the grave for some reason and they're like attacking you. There's like a different angle behind them, and I think that's kind of neat.
Yeah, I think last year we did more of the traditional type zombies, and this year we totally plan to do these kind of somewhat unusual zombie movies.
Yeah. Oh yeah, brother.
Yeah, we totally planned this.
Yeah, you know what I mean? That's how we do things sometimes. We just pick it out and see what happens, But yeah, we got a couple good things to talk about when it comes to this Dead and Buried movie. We've been waiting to do this one forever, and it's from the year 1981. And I always like it when we do like these like early 80s movies because everything is just shot and filmed like just different. It's just very, very classic. You know what I mean? It's very fun.
Yeah, it hasn't quite become like the typical like glamorous 1980s yet. It's still kind of like the 70s a little bit.
Yeah.
So everything's made still like a 1970s movie. Like I always tend to say that all these movies feel like Friday the 13th because that's like what an early 1980s movie looks like to me. So this movie looked like Friday the 13th.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of has that same kind of like gritty camera style. Like everybody's like dressed up in like 70s clothes. You know what I mean? Like the acting is a little bit more like monotone. You know what I mean? It's pretty cool. But yeah, we're going to be talking all about this. What was he? A mortician doctor?
He was. He wasn't a doctor. He was a mortician.
This guy was cracking me up this whole movie. I don't think his character was supposed to be funny, but to me, he was funny. Okay.
But like this is one of those movies that is kind of unintentionally funny.
Yeah.
Because it's so ridiculous.
Exactly.
But, yeah.
But we'll get all into it. But like every Retro Blood, we talk about what is going on in the world of the pro wrestling and the metal music. The reason we do this is because we're kind of like the photography guy at the beginning of the film. You know what I mean? We're on. We're taking trips. We're we're doing photography all around the world, but we don't just give you a photograph. No, we also give you flesh-eating creature towns that kill us and make us into gas station attendants. We do that too. We give you both. We don't just give you one thing. We give you more things. Okay?
Absolutely. We give you everything.
It's kind of the same, I guess. All right. So this movie came out May 29th, 1981. All right?
Yeah.
I wasn't even a twinkle in my dad's eye yet, brother. All right, when this movie came out.
You were not.
But, we'll talk about the wrestling first, because we have a couple interesting things to talk about. So, breaking the kayfabe, we actually went to some wrestling this week, and saw some great wrestling this week here in the August of the 2024. Well, I guess the weekend of the end of July, early August of 2024. So we're just going to talk a little bit about the AEW not pay-per-view, but the Dynamite that we went to, and we'll give like a little thoughts on SummerSlam, because the only thing I really found that like happened on this date was like one of the most random, like, so there's this guy wrestler named Steve O. No, not that one.
Steve O. Not the guy from Jackass.
Not the guy from Jackass in 1981. He defeated the Mongolian Stomper for the NWA National title in Atlanta, Georgia. And I was like, Steve O, what the fuck? Like, who the hell is this guy? And apparently this Steve O guy, his name is Steve Olanoski. And the only
no wonder they shortened that to O.
Yeah, that's the only reason I could think of. Like, I guess he went by Steve O because nobody wanted to say his last name.
Yeah, exactly.
They're like, oh, fuck, what's your last name? Oh, Olanoski. I ain't saying that shit on commentary. We're going to name you O. All right. So I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, we said many times here on the Retro Blood, we don't just talk about horror movies. We don't just talk about wrestling. We don't just talk about metal music, but we actually do it. We go to these things all the time. We see horror movies. We go to the live wrestling events, and we go to the live rock shows when they come around town. So keep it on that tradition. Me and Alison went out to the Greenville, South Carolina Dynamite.
We did.
That happened this past Wednesday, July the 29th. And, we talk about Greenville, South Carolina, here and there on the Retro Blood, for past wrestling events, because it used to be a pretty prominent wrestling town. Pretty much a lot of the South Carolina and North Carolina areas used to be, obviously run mostly by the Crockett territory. But we would have different WWE shows every once in a while show up over here too. But I'm glad we're getting like a little bit of both. Like we can get WWE to come to Greenville and AEW to come to Greenville. I doubt we're going to have any kind of pay-per-views at that arena, but at least we'll get the weekly shows here and there. So,
yeah, it's too small for the pay-per-views now. Like maybe a few years ago that would have been the case, but yeah, I mean WWE is so hot now that they couldn't have a pay-per-view in that place. I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, just judging by those Atlanta prices, boy.
Yeah, although I don't know that Atlanta arena is any larger than the one in Greenville.
Yeah.
But, Atlanta's a big city.
Yeah, exactly. Better airport and everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, this yeah. Bigger airport, brother. I know. I got to go there on Monday. Oh, boy. So, this was a pretty good Dynamite. I don't think this is my favorite Dynamite that we've been to together. That one was probably going to be the first one that we went to together, which was in Charlotte. And it had the Nick Gage versus Jericho match where they lost their Pizza Hut sponsorship.
Yeah. Well, I mean, nothing is going to ever compare to Nick Gage cutting Chris Jericho with a pizza cutter.
Yeah.
While at the same time a Pizza Hut commercial ran.
Yeah.
Nothing's ever going to beat that.
How can you beat that, man? Come on now. And it had that really good elite tag team match on there too, where they came out in the basketball stuff. I remember that being pretty good as well. But this show was okay.
With the Toon Squad stuff or whatever from Space Jam.
Yeah, the Space. Yeah.
I guess that was the thing at the time.
Yeah, they were doing like a Space Jam promotion for that particular episode. So, but this one was pretty good. Like this one, it was more like building building little angles to the big All In pay-per-view in Wembley. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. Like we got the American champion MJF. He came out for a pretty good promo. But the problem is, like, he has this American title. He's trying to heel, call everybody rednecks, and he's doing the typical heel promo that I'm not sure if it aired before he came out, but they did like this, before Dynamite came on, they did an MJF promo where he's basically on the screen talking about how rednecks and all these hicks live here, and when he means America, he doesn't really mean South Carolina. You know what I mean? Like that kind of promo. But people still chant USA to him, so it's kind of hard.
Well, so so I don't think this aired. I think this was just to get the crowd going, although that was the best thing that they did all night as far as promos go. Yeah. But they, to me, being a lifelong resident of this area, they didn't really understand the audience. Like, they didn't understand the South Carolina audience. And I'm probably going to say some things here that are going to be offensive to the people of South Carolina, but I don't really care. For one, they didn't, like, remember when he was doing like the Clemson and the Gamecocks thing?
Yeah, wiping his ass with them.
Yeah, so like they didn't really, like, that didn't really work very well, because the way it came across was, so basically when he pulled out the Gamecocks jersey and said he was going to wipe his ass with it, half the crowd cheered and half the crowd booed. And then when he did the Clemson one, the other half cheered and the other half, and then one half cheered and the other half booed. Like, they just switched back and forth. So like half the crowd in Greenville, South Carolina, is going to cheer when you knock the Gamecocks, and the other half will cheer when you knock Clemson, because you're going to have two different. You just have two different fan bases that are going to go to this, and this just didn't really work very well. You can also tell that the audience that night did not understand this angle at all. Like, they didn't understand. Like MJF is clearly supposed to be the heel. He's healing on everybody. He's healing on the people at the show, calling them stupid. And then they proceed to act stupid by chanting USA and pulling for the heel against the clear face who's trying to act like a face, while they're chanting USA at the heel. Like, it was just stupid. Like, the crowd didn't get this at all whatsoever. I just feel like it was such a really terrible crowd.
Well, the thing is, we can relate this to 80s wrestling. You know what I mean? Anytime there's like an American gimmick, the American crowd's always, they're going to chant USA. They're going to be on the side. Like what they're trying to do now,
I guess,
is they're trying to reverse the roles, which is not really working. They're trying to make the Will Ospreay the British guy, the baby face, and they're trying to make this American hero with this American championship the heel in America. It just, I know it's very old school, of like that you got the American baby face with the American title fighting the foreign heel. You know what I mean? But maybe because like Greenville is such an old school territory, that was just what was going on. Most people, when they see the red, white, and blue, you know what I mean. Like, it's, even if it's on a bad character like MJF, they're still gonna cheer him because that's the flag. That's the American spirit right there.
Those are very kind words that you were using to describe what happened. I see what you're saying. I mean, they're trying to reverse. I don't think they're actually even trying to reverse. Maybe they are. Maybe they are consciously trying to reverse it, but I think that it's just that I think that they thought that with MJF changing the name of the title to the American title, that it would be just like a dig at like Ospreay. And Ospreay's clearly the face. He acts like a face. Ospreay is clearly the heel. He acts like a heel. He heals on the crowd. But like, I don't know. Like, there's a certain like contingent of Americans who are just, I don't know what the word is. I don't want to use the word stupid, but even though that's what I'm thinking, but like anytime they see the flag or America, they immediately have to start chanting USA because they don't know anything else to do. They're just programmed to do that. And that's why this is not working, because they're like, oh, flag, America, USA, USA, USA. That's the only thing they know how to do. When they could play into the storyline, and they could cheer the face, which they actually like, and they could boo the heel, which they actually hate, but they're cheering the heel that they hate and booing the face that they love. It doesn't make any fucking sense because they just don't understand. The people in this crowd just didn't understand the angle. They just did not understand it.
Well, I mean, come on now. Like I know what the MJF is trying to do with the American title. He's trying to take it across the border and defend it and be like the asshole
Which
American.
he did Friday night.
Which he did at Mexico, and he's going to do at Wembley.
Yeah.
But in America, I'm saying it's just not going to work. It's kind of like Bret Hart. You know, Bret Hart was a heel all in America during the 97. But every time he went home to Canada, he was cheered for basically, you know, being a heel the whole time. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think MJF is trying to do like the reverse, where he's trying to get booed crazy, not in America, but in America. Like he's trying to be a heel within America. It just doesn't work because of the whole America, you know, title represented, and they still like the guy even when he's heel. So it's a little tough for them in America, but I think the match at Wembley will be fine though. I did like when MJF called. He said he defeated the red coat terrorist Will Ospreay very easy. I did like that line.
That was pretty funny. Yeah, the red coat terrorist. Yeah.
Yeah. So then after that we had Will Ospreay versus Lance Archer. Not much of a match, but I thought it was still pretty good. The match that I saw with them at the G1 in Dallas ages ago was way better, but you know, it's a G1 match. So
well, you can't. I was about to say you can't compare a G1 match to, you know, the opening match on Dynamite.
Yeah. So, but I thought the card was pretty good. You know, we had the women's title, well, the Eliminator match. I thought it was pretty decent. The crowd got in pretty good with that one. We had we actually had a pretty good promo by Bryan Danielson as well too. You know, basically saying like he is gonna be, you know, he's gonna put his career on the line versus Swerve. So what did you think about that? Like, do you think it's like a foregone conclusion now that he's gonna win the belt because he put his career on the line?
Yes.
Or?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's a lot.
Because he's not retiring now. He's not retiring now. He's gonna win that title from Swerve.
Yeah,
there's no doubt. There's no doubt in my mind that he's going to win that title from Swerve. Now he might lose it the next week at All Out, but he's gonna beat Swerve for that title.
So we had this trios match that I thought was pretty good as well too. That Beast Mortis is a pretty cool live. I like him.
Yes.
You know, pretty good match. Back and forth, a lot of action when it comes there, and they actually gave that Mortis a win over Mark Briscoe, so hopefully we could see him. I guess he's going to be more on the Ring of Honor. Hopefully somebody will watch it. And then we had the little small angle between Tony Storm and Mariah May. Not too much there. And then we had the... we actually got to see Camille in action versus Brittany J. So it's a pretty little quick squash match. And obviously we got like there's a promo from Mercedes, you know, calling out DMD and saying she's obsessed with her and she's going to beat her at the Wembley show. So. What do you think about Mercedes? Go ahead.
So when they get somebody like Brittany Jade, who was like a local wrestler, like she's from South Carolina, I believe, South Carolina, North Carolina, one of the two. Do they just pay her for like one night?
Yeah, probably, and get some TV time.
Yeah,
probably like $200, and a hot dog and a sandwich. No, hot dog and a Coke
sandwich. Maybe
hot dog and a Coke.
Hopefully, it's a little more than that. But you're right; it might not be. But yeah, I know that Sammy Guevara did that for a while with WWE before he quote unquote took off. But you were going to ask me, what do I think about Mercedes Moné?
Yeah, I think she's doing okay. She has a big heater, Camille.
Yeah, I hate Mercedes Moné. I also hated Sasha Banks. I don't think she's good at all. I don't like anything about her. Like, I did like some of her matches in WWE, but I think her promo was terrible.
You don't like her laugh?
No, I don't like her laugh. I don't even think she's really a good wrestler, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm sure she's a nice person, but I don't know. I just don't.
Come on, man. She likes Dragon Ball Z. Come on now.
She does like Dragon Ball Z. That's true. She likes anime.
So then
she's Snoop Dogg's cousin.
Yeah, there you go. And she was in The Mandalorian for like 2 episodes.
She was. You know, she was.
So now we have the main event. I thought the main event was pretty good. Pretty wild. Hangman Adam Page versus Darby Allin. Of course, Darby just flipping all over the place. He's just throwing him around like a sack of meat. All right. And pretty shocking finish with Darby rolling up Hangman. So I guess they're going to be doing something with them, possibly at the pay-per-view or something like that. It's just very interesting. Because I think it took me and you both back by surprise of Darby picking up the win for that.
That did really surprise me. Yes, I agree.
And then, the way they do these Dynamites, if nobody's ever been, like right afterwards, they give you Rampage, and you literally get this coked out Tony Khan screaming at us, "Everybody, stay! We got some big stars coming for Rampage coming! Please don't go! You guys are leaving your seats. This is the best wrestling you could ever see in your life, bro. I'm freaking out. Okay, it's coming up next. Let's count it down." It's like, fuck, bro, calm down. All right.
It's so. First of all, just for a disclaimer out there, it has never been proven that Tony Khan does cocaine. But I don't know how else you would explain most of his behavior, like when he does his media scrums at 2:00 in the morning or whatever, and he's still screaming and
he's ready. He's ready to go, make it happen.
This man loves wrestling. That's one thing I can say about him. He loves wrestling.
So, if you all like just watching wrestling live and you don't really care about star power, Rampage is the show for you. Okay? Because we were waiting there and every match was just like useless. I mean, I'm not going to lie. It's just there. Like, not a whole lot going on. So.
No. Rampage is. I haven't watched Rampage probably in months, if not years.
Yeah.
But now I see why. There's nothing. There's nothing on this show.
Yes.
What was the main event that we didn't stay for?
Private Party
and
Private Party and MXM, which is the guys from the modeling agency, the male model guys. Yes. So hey, you know what? There you go, brother. Banger after banger.
Yes.
So and of course we had a car incident after the show, which was very, very, very interesting in itself as well too. The trusty Trans Am that I had, which is my Mustang, failed us that night. But what are you gonna do?
For the first time. It
man.
failed us.
Fucking blowing up shit. By the way, if y'all get stuck in some this kind of it kind of brings it up to like an 80s movie, horror movie. Technically, what we went to. If you get stuck on a highway in some no-name South Carolina, North Carolina town, and try to get a tire replacement, or a jack
just
company,
don't.
Just don't do it. Okay, just bite the bullet. Find somewhere to sleep, basically, because
because that's all you're gonna do. You're not gonna find anybody to come help you.
No. And if you try to find something online, they're just gonna scam you. By the way. All right, so let's do some quick thoughts on SummerSlam. Then we'll get into some of the metal. Alison, what did you think of the SummerSlam 2024 show?
I think this is one of the best shows I've seen in a long time. Like the WWE is so hot right now. It's almost like Attitude Era.
Yeah.
Hot. It's hot. And like their shows are good. They still don't really quite have the personalities that the Attitude Era had. But they're getting there. And like it's I don't know. Like this show is one of the best shows I've seen in a long time, and the shows just get better and better. The return of Roman Reigns was amazing, which I fully expected that to happen. Seeing Arn was kind of cool.
Yeah.
So when Arn was talking to Cody, and he said he told Cody that Cody had that Arn still had some connections in the locker room, and that Cody won't be out there alone, and Cody has some friends, and he has some he knows and some he doesn't know. Is one of those friends like Roman Reigns? Did Arn Anderson get Roman Reigns to come help Cody?
So I'm not exactly sure about that as well, because I don't remember there being any kind of connection at all with Arn Anderson and Roman Reigns. You know what I mean? Unless there's like some sort of like Paul Heyman angle there or something. But I think what was supposed to happen, which I mean, I could be completely wrong, but we had that spot with Jacob Fatu doing the splash off the top rope on the table
where he probably hurt himself.
It's wrestling, so you don't know until it's actually released and reported yet. But as of right now, okay, I'm not sure if he actually really hurt his foot or not, or if it was an angle. Because some people are saying, okay, it was an angle just to get him out of the ring, so when Roman showed up, he didn't have to be hit by or done anything by Roman, which kind of makes sense. You know what I mean?
That makes sense. Yeah.
But also too, it doesn't make sense because wouldn't somebody come out and help more with the 2-on-1 beatdown compared to a 1-on-1 beatdown? And some saying, well, maybe Arn's surprise was Jey Uso. You know what I mean? So I could see that possibly being the reason too. But I'm not sure until it comes out. But yeah, it was kind of strange him saying that. I guess, maybe he was just talking about Kevin Owens or Randy Orton. So I'm not really sure. I'm just surprised he didn't hand him a gun to use in the match.
That would have been amazing.
It's Bloodline rules, man. Come on.
He's like, here, take this to the ring with you. Take this to the ring with you.
But I thought the show was fun too. This show was all about storylines. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So the WWE, what I've been noticing for the past couple years while the Papa H has been taking over, he's done very well when it comes to at least the main roster stuff on, building up stories and trying to keep the personalities on screen a lot. If you're trying to get over a new act, you know what I mean? We're not going to show them for a month or two and just get rid of them. We're going to keep them on screen as much as we can, to help them get over the new guys. But they have been doing a lot more of the very soap opera angles that they kind of used to do in the Attitude Era too. You know what I mean? The love stories, you know what I mean? The people trying to take people's spots, So it's very it's been really good with their storytelling. I still think some of the wrestling matches are not as good as AEW. I think AEW does a little bit more creative stuff within their matches and more dangerous stuff, which I'm not sure if that's a good thing either. But, WWE definitely has a style. The main event I thought was okay, but I didn't really like for a main event, you know what I mean? I think they're getting to this new format where they just want to have people interfere. But the interfering's coming. You know what I mean? Anytime you hear a Bloodline rules match, you already know there's people going to be interfering. And I think Cody definitely needs to move on to something else. Okay, even though I don't think that's going to happen.
Besides Bloodline stuff.
Yeah, besides Bloodline stuff, I think he needs to move on to another hot program. Obviously, the one with Orton should be the one he should be doing. Roman Reigns coming back, what does that mean? The problem with the Roman, he's a super hot babyface right now, but Roman Reigns babyface didn't get over before, so I guess we'll see how this new one does.
So the way they fix that though is you don't have Roman come back as a he's not Cody. He's not Cody. Cody is a white meat babyface to me. He's all good. He's there's no bad in Cody. Cody's just a good guy. He's a good guy who, grew up and is, he loved his daddy and he watched Star Trek and his mom is great and he kisses his mama on the front row of the shows and all that kind of stuff. Roman Reigns is going to be a face, but he's going to be kind of, so Roman Reigns, okay, if I were writing this, Roman Reigns came back and he helped Cody, not because he likes Cody, but because he wants to have another chance at the title against Cody, not against Solo.
Yeah.
He wants to wrestle the guy who beat him. Because the Bloodline never turned on Roman, right? He just disappeared after WrestleMania.
Yeah, it just appeared. Basically what happened was, Solo just took it over. He kicked Jimmy out and he kicked Paul out and he just brought his new guys. And so, and obviously, Roman Reigns is pissed off about that because he's trying to take over his territory. So, it makes sense why Roman wants to go after the Solo guy. I just thought also, too, he probably should have, maybe speared or beat down Cody, too. It's kind of like when he came back that other SummerSlam where he came back after during the I think it was kind of during COVID era. But he came back in that SummerSlam where he beat down Braun Strowman and The Fiend. Yeah. And then he just took the belt. So I don't know. We'll see where it goes. I just hope that Jacob Fatu is okay because, they really need him. They've been pushing him really strong.
Yeah, I hope his leg's not hurt, but to me, it looks like he hurt his knee, and that means he's going to be out for a while.
Yeah, so hopefully, knee or ankle, one of the two. He couldn't put weight on it, so we'll see what happens. But I thought the Damian Priest Gunther match was okay. Obviously we got a little bit of a swerve. We got swerve earlier too with the Liv and really. Liv.
I actually fell asleep during the Gunther Priest match, so I woke up after Finn Balor had turned on him.
Yeah.
So I don't actually know what happened, but I know that Gunther won.
He basically just put his foot on the rope, and he saved Gunther from losing, putting his foot on the rope, and then Priest saw solid on the Tron, and he got all pissed off, and he got distracted, then he got choked out. So it was all right. Actually, my favorite match of the night probably was the Logan Paul LA Knight match. I like that match the best, like for the actual match. So with LA Knight winning, I thought that match had a lot of good spots on it. I thought it was very entertaining as well too. But yeah, I thought it was a pretty good show. You know what I mean? I liked it. I like it where they don't like load you up with a shit ton of matches. They kind of like give the matches that they put on the card, some time. I think AEW should do that because AEW shows take like forever. They get fucking forever, bro. Like that's like 6 hours with that shit.
Right, but the problem that you have, though, is that AEW has signed so many people they can't use all of them.
Yeah.
So they have to have these long shows to get people on it. But, yeah, you're right. I mean, if you count the pre-show, you're going to get, 13 matches at an AEW pay-per-view. And I understand it's value. Like, oh, look, we're giving you value for your money. And I understand that. But those shows are fucking long.
Long stuff, bro.
And WWE learned that. They learned their lesson with that when they did what was the last WrestleMania before COVID? Wasn't that the one with the girls' match as the main event? And it started like 1 o'clock in the morning.
Almost 1 in the morning. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why they copied New Japan and went to the two. Well, they kind of did the two format when the COVID era started.
Yeah.
And then they just kept it from there. Now they're going to be doing two night SummerSlams. So I'm like, oh shit, okay.
Their business model to me is so funny, although it's obvious.
Yeah.
But they're like, oh, we had to do 2 nights of WrestleMania because of COVID, so let's just do 2 nights of WrestleMania from now on.
Yeah. And
then we'll sell twice as many tickets.
Yeah.
And the tickets are the same price. They're just selling them for 2 nights now. Yeah. And then now they're like, well, that worked for WrestleMania. Let's do it for SummerSlam. Exactly. And now all their shows are going to be 2. All the big 4 shows are going to be 2 nights.
Hopefully not.
Which that doesn't really bother me. But Royal Rumble will be 2 nights soon. You'll have the main event being the women's Rumble one night, and the next night will be the men's Rumble or whatever. I don't see how Survivor Series would work as 2 nights unless you just have, a Survivor Series main event, 4 games, one night, then the next one being the next.
It seems like they don't really count Survivor Series as like one of the big 4s anymore anyway.
Oh, really? Well, what would be the
Money in the Bank would be like their next big one. They always count Money.
That would be the next big 4? Okay.
Yeah, because you could do 2 nights Money in the Bank.
Yeah, that's true.
So
that's true.
But yeah, fun little week of wrestling. Like I said, everybody, we live the gimmick. All right,
we do.
We're out there doing the thing. So I thought it was a pretty good old week, and we'll see what happens here in the month of August on the pro wrestling too. But Alison, what do you got for the music? What are we going to be listening to as we traveled to the dead and buried land?
So, man, this is actually pretty special. I'm really glad that this turned up because I don't know that we've talked about this band before. So Dead and Buried came out May 29th, 1981. And right before this, May 25th, 1981, Anvil released their first album, Hard and Heavy. I know you've heard of Anvil, but are you familiar with their music at all? Much? Have you listened to them much?
Yeah, I listened to a little bit of them here and there. I like them.
Okay. Yeah, Anvil's one of those really good bands. They're like one of those. How should I say it? They did have fans like in the '80s, but when they first came out, this is their first album. Their big album that's kind of got them started was the next year. They released Metal on Metal, which is like which has the sound of Anvil that we think of today with the the kind of speed metal, really early thrash sound that influenced Metallica to do what they were doing on Kill 'Em All. Hard and Heavy is a little bit different. It's slower. It's not as fast, but still has that same really good songwriting from Lips. But it's not as fast. It's more like an old style metal, like Judas Priest or something like that. But Anvil was like one of those bands that should have been huge but weren't. Something just happened and they just never took off. They're like, one of those bands that every band that you love listens to, but they just kind of never made it. Most people today, from my cynical point of view, most people today probably listen to Anvil because of the movie that they made. There was a documentary about Anvil that came out, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 years ago. And then, so they became kind of this meme band that, people started listening to because of their story. And then they kind of got big again, and they're still touring. I think they recently just came to Greenville or are about to come to Greenville, one of the two. But yeah, they're still touring and playing shows. But like I said, this album, Hard and Heavy, is a little bit different than the Anvil that you think of from Metal on Metal with Mothra and all those songs. It's a little bit slower, but it does have really good songs on it. Like School Love is really good. AC/DC is really good. They do a cover of the Rolling Stones' Paint It Black. And then they have the Anvil classic Bondage that finishes up the album. But yeah, have you ever seen the Anvil movie, the documentary?
No, I've never seen it. That one before. I mean, I know we talked about Anvil before on the podcast.
Okay.
I think they're pretty good. Kind of a cool like 80s rock band. You know what I mean? Some creative. They're kind of like a Judas Priest type. A little bit.
Kinda, yeah.
So, but I never seen the movie though.
Okay. I mean, it's interesting. The movie is it's just a good documentary about like what happens when a band doesn't make it.
Oh, okay.
It kind of shows them, like working their regular jobs. It follows Lips on his regular job, and like all these people that he played in Anvil with are still his friends. Rob Reiner, the original drummer, is still his friend, and they still play drum. He still plays drums in Anvil. And the movie is basically about them getting booked on this like really horrible European tour where nothing goes right, and their booking agent doesn't know what she's doing, and she fucks everything up. And they're trying to record this new album, and they're trying to find a way to afford to pay for it with the producer that produced their really good classic albums from the 80s. It's a really good story for anyone who's ever played in a band and knows how hard it is to get anything done. Like this, it's a really good story. So I would also recommend watching, I think the documentary. I think it's just called Anvil.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's what we would be listening to on the way to see Dead and Buried.
Yeah,
buddy. We would be listening to Anvil, Hard and Heavy.
Hard and Heavy, brother. All right. But yeah, I mean, like I like it though, like how like half their album covers is just them like smashing steel and carrying around steel.
Oh yeah, well I mean that's what an Anvil's for, man. It smashes steel.
Smashes steel.
Heavy metal.
This album cover is pretty cool too. It has like the anvil on there, right? Then it has this guy like burning it.
Well, he's hitting it with a hammer.
Oh, is it hit a hammer?
Yeah,
it's a hard hitting man.
Yeah, so like he's hitting it like with a hammer, and then sparks are flying off of it. I think that's what that's supposed to be.
Yeah. So pretty good album covers. I mean, album covers. Pretty good song names on here. Okay.
Yes.
Like Oh Baby.
Oh Baby.
There you go.
And Bedroom Game.
Yeah. There you go.
At the Apartment.
Our boy, our sheriff on here, I bet he's a big Anvil fan. I could see that.
Yeah, I could see that too. Yeah, that guy's a little bit of a mystery to me, but we'll talk about him when we do the show, we talk about the movie.
But I say let's talk about who booked this shit, brother. All right?
Yeah,
when it comes to the Dead and Buried. Gary Sherman, all right, is the guy who booked this. He's best known for doing some work like Death Lane and the Poltergeist 3 on here too. All right. And I guess this was like his fourth movie he did.
Yeah, it was the third movie he directed. In the 60s, he made a movie about Bo Diddley, who was like a blues musician, and then he made Deathline, and then he made Dead and Buried. He wrote a movie between those. But yeah, that's the third movie he directed.
Yeah. So there's a couple interesting stuff about this movie. So the film was made with, very little money, which most horror films are. And it actually did a little bit less money at the box office. Like, it didn't do well at all. All right. But a lot of the critics, they really liked Stan Winston's special effects. Like, he got a lot of praise for his special effects performance. And it was he did do some really cool effects when it comes to, like, when the dead were rising and everything. And then when they were transforming that one dead person. Also, too, like when the crazy doctor, mortician, took the body and like transformed it into like making it look better. I thought that was a really cool effect that this Stan Winston did. So
yeah, the special effects I was going to say the special effects are great in this. Yeah. Stan Winston's a brilliant makeup artist.
So apparently this movie also was novelized as well.
Mm-hmm. By most horror and science fiction movies were back then.
Yeah, so kind of a cool thing. So a couple of things about the production. Apparently there was like a little mishap where one of the writers, O'Bannon, all right, Dan O'Bannon, he stated that Sun's Shusett had actually written the story by himself. But he needed O'Bannon's name on the project, promising that he would implement some of O'Bannon's changes. But upon seeing the finished film, O'Bannon realized that Shusett had not... Shusett. Sunset. That'd be an interesting name. So Shusett had not included his material, but it was too late for him to take his name off the credits. So, so that's basically like... This Ronald Shusett wrote the whole movie, and he needed Dan O'Bannon's, I guess, help or some. And Dan O'Bannon brought him the, his ideas, and Shusett was basically like, "That don't work for me, brother." And then just did his own movie, put his name on the credits.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like to me. Like, because it sounds like to me like he wanted Dan O'Bannon's name in the credits because that would be a name people would recognize. And for the time period, but he didn't want to use any of his ideas, so he just wrote the screenplay and then put his name on it. So Dan O'Bannon kind of disavows this. He says he didn't write in this movie at all.
Yeah.
But we've talked about Dan O'Bannon before. I mean, he wrote Alien. Yeah. He wrote Blue Thunder, Return of the Living Dead, which we did on the show. He wrote Life Force, which we did on the show. So he did a bunch of movies that we're going to do on the show. And movies that we have done on the show. So we've talked about Dan O'Bannon a lot before, but apparently he did not work on this.
Yeah.
In reality.
Yeah, it seems like he was gonna he was. It just something happened where it's just like,
true.
My ideas didn't happen.
So technically he did work on it. They just didn't use any of his ideas.
So this is also one of the films that was banned in the UK for their video nasty stuff, which I was like thinking like, man, I mean,
I was thinking the same thing.
I think, okay, I was trying to put myself back in like 1981, and I guess there was a lot more gruesome stuff. You know what I mean? Like for that time period that I could see if we're super censoring, but I was like, this is not that bad, you know?
Well, one thing you have to understand too about this whole video nasties thing is like the political landscape of England at the time.
Yeah.
So like in 1980, or I believe it was 1980, when Margaret Thatcher became prime minister, like there was this huge turn toward this really, really, really buttoned down conservative attitude in England. And like the Video Nasties program was just a way to censor people. It was just a way to like, well, this is terrible for people, so let's cut it out. Let's ban this. And they, so they banned all these movies. Like we talk about the Video Nasties a lot because but a lot of the movies that we do were on that Video Nasties list, and this is one of them. Although I don't find this like I would like to know why this was put on the list. Like, I don't know specifically the reason.
Probably just the
like
name.
Cannibal Holocaust.
Yeah, that
Cannibal
makes sense.
Holocaust I can understand, but like this is just like this is pretty tame. You know, especially for its time. This is more tame than Friday the 13th for sure.
Yeah. I mean, like it did have, like I said, it did have some gruesome parts to it, but like I don't know, for a list on there, it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Speaking of some of the cast, I just want to mention some of them on here. It's pretty cool. Apparently, the guy who played the William G. Dobbs, which was our mortician guy, which he was something, was played by a very famous actor at this time, Jack Albertson, Harold Jack Albertson. Yeah. And this guy, he's been known to be like a Tony, Oscar, and Emmy-winning actor. He was like a triple crown of acting, which was very rare at the time. And this is actually his last movie he did before he actually passed away, which is very interesting. Yeah, so I mean, he did this movie, and then he did a voiceover for. Let me bring it up here. It was like this. Let me see if I got it on here. Yeah, he did. He did a TV movie role. All right, it was Terror at Alcatraz. All right.
Okay.
So we did that. That was like one of his last TV roles, and I believe this was for movies. Yes, it was for the movies. This was Dead and Buried was his last like movie that he acted in, but then he also did the voice over his final role for The Fox and the Hound. So he was on there too. So. Pretty interesting.
Okay. That's the one. Yeah, I remember that movie. It's a Disney movie.
Yeah.
Very sad. Very sad. Makes you cry.
And, we have a couple other, pretty famous actors and actresses on here.
Robert Englund.
Yes. The yeah. In my notes, I didn't know his name on
Freddy
here.
Krueger.
Yeah. I just called him Young Freddy the whole time on my notes. And I was like, oh, shit, he's here. Like, it's kind of neat seeing him, like, playing a role, like, before he was, like, a megastar. Because, about 3 years from now, he's going to be blowing up. Pretty much
he's going to be super
role.
famous 3 years from now.
Yeah.
He was also in V, which might have been filmed before he was in Nightmare on Elm Street as well. Or maybe it was after. I can't really remember. But the movie also has Melody Anderson in it, who I know from... Flash Gordon. Yes.
That's the movie she did before. She did Dead and Buried. Yes. So very, very, very interesting crew. I thought everybody did it well when it comes to the acting performances on there. So definitely pretty fun. But Alison, I say let's get into the town of Porter's Bluff. Let's talk a little bit about some Dead and Buried.
Let's do it.
This is the road to Potter's Bluff. Maybe you've been there. Clean, picturesque, full of old-fashioned friendliness. The kind of town everyone likes to visit. This is the road to Potter's Bluff. There is no road out.
Welcome to Potter's Bluff.
From the creators of Alien, terror brought down to Earth, dead and buried.
Is there any way whatsoever to reanimate people after they have died? To get them to walk around?
That guy, the one you came to see me about last week, the one that died after the car wreck.
Yeah.
I just saw him. Man, he's dead. It's the same guy.
Welcome to Potter's Bluff.
When you die, you expect to remain dead and buried.
You had a very close call. Just lie still. I'm gonna give you something. It's gonna make you feel even better.
When you die in Potter's Bluff, expect the unexpected. From the creators of Alien, dead and buried. It will take your breath away. All of it. Dead and buried.
All right. So we start off in a small town where no murders ever happen at all. In these small little towns ever. Very shocking. We're in Porter's Bluff. All right, we see shots of the town and everything. And this is when we meet the character Freddy. And Freddy has the lucrative career of traveling around and taking photographs. Alison.
Mm-hmm.
Is that even like a career anymore? Like nowadays?
Well, yeah. I mean, there are professional photographers for sure.
But
a cheap photographer is like $100 an hour. So yeah, that is a lucrative thing.
So happens. I thought he was doing the 1981's version of TikToking. You know what I mean? Where he's like filming himself on the beach and everything.
I guess so. Yeah, kind of.
Because like he not only was he taking pictures of the beach, but he's also taking pictures of like this like shipwreck stuff around the beach.
Yeah.
Like nets and shit. And then he starts taking pictures of some random hot blonde that just shows up on the beach.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Just imagine that. You know?
I know what you mean.
Get out there on the beach and got your nice little camera out there on your lonesome. And then you see a hot blonde and you're just like, you know what? Let's make it happen.
It just so happens that she wants you to take pictures of her.
Yeah. So they start flirting around everything. And she thinks that he's famous. And he's like, well, I'm not famous, but I could be rich because I'm a photographer.
I'm a photographer.
And he starts taking pictures of her, and he's all like, man, you could be in Playboy. And I was like, I don't know if that would fly nowadays for the line. If you're taking
I have a
pictures
feeling
of
that
her.
really wouldn't fly then in reality.
Well, he said
we're going to get a twist in a minute to find out why this is working. But yes.
Well, she's flirting some more. She takes her top off, and she's all like, hey, did you want me? Huh? How do you like me now? So then he's like, all right. And then like he's like, oh, you want me to take you like here? Like now? And then he goes in for it, brother. And then right when he goes for it, the whole town folk just come out and start attacking his ass. And I was like, oh, I didn't see that coming. Because like, usually you would have like maybe one or two like, trying to rob his ass. But this was like the whole town. It was like attacking this guy.
Well, yeah, the town doesn't like outsiders.
And then I
can understand that.
Yeah, and then they start attacking his ass, and they like knock him down with a shovel, and then they tie him up with like the rope, the sea rope. What do you call that? The rope.
Sea rope is fine. Yeah, it's like it's one of those big ropes.
It's one of those big, yeah. And that looked pretty crazy because it's like it's like basically you can tell that he's almost brain dead because they fucking knocked him out so much.
Yeah,
and then they light his out.
Right.
And then they light his ass on fire. And I was like, fuck, we're starting off hot here. No wonder it got banned in England. All right? Man, those English, they can't handle that in England. In England, they only want the sex. They don't want the killing. All right? So we got that, and they start lighting him on fire. And we start hearing some... then we cut to a scene of... This is when we meet the sheriff. We see Sheriff Dan. Okay? He goes check on this car that flipped over and that caught on fire. And he's waiting for the morgue guy, William Dobbs. And Dobbs' gimmick that he's late and he shows up to classical music all the time. All right? So then they check on the body inside and they think it's dead, but it's actually alive and it starts moving around. All right? And next we get Dan. He's trying to figure out some stuff about the incident, and trying to like gather up some clues of who this guy is because they can't really tell because he's all burned up and stuff. And this is when he goes to the local diner, and this is when we first see young Freddy. He's there. All right, and he's all talking about, like the hey, I hope you can get this case good, Dan, because I guess Dan is like a semi-new sheriff there for the town. And
I would hope so.
Yeah. And I remember him saying like, there's not a whole lot of murders that happen in this town. So he's got to kind of like has to figure out who this guy is all on his own. And then we can see out of this, whole diner that everybody who actually killed Freddy was in there. Like the waitress girl, she was the one that lit Freddy on fire. And then the whole townspeople, they were all there taking, when they were lighting him on fire, they were taking pictures of him, you know, to save for their scrapbook. All right. And then we get, so we're at nighttime, and so we get another shot of this old guy drinking. All right. Mm-hmm. And he's at the boat dock, and he's drinking, screaming at random objects of how great a boating he is. Like he knows all about boating because he's drunk. All right. And he's there, and he's drinking his drinks and stuff, and he hears a sound, and then out of nowhere, this somebody grabs him from behind, and all the townspeople start taking photos of him. All right, and they start gutting his ass. And I wrote, this must be the TikTok of 1981, because they're filming him by killing him. Now we get back to Dobbs, all right, and he's listening to some more old music while he's working on dead corpses. That's his gimmick. Alison, have you worked on some corpses?
Yeah, well, he is an older guy. No, I've listened to old music, but I've never worked on a corpse. But yeah, I think that, I mean, I don't know, the character is kind of old, but I find this, and we'll talk about this, and we've talked about this in other movies too, but like one thing I find interesting is that, you know, like the people who were making these movies weren't really necessarily young people, I don't think. So I think that they just put old music in their movies because that's the music they were used to, if you know what I mean.
Yes. So Sheriff Dan comes in, right? And he talks to Jimmy. And I guess Jimmy is one of the students of Dobbs. All right. And they start making jokes about Jimmy of how he's very green. And I think they said that he masturbated in one of the rooms. Then that's what they're getting at.
Yeah, I think that's what they're implying, yes.
And then Dan said, yeah, he's a good kid and everything. I caught him with a couple joints, but he's a good kid. All right. So that's where they were talking about him. And now they're talking about Dobbs is like saying like he likes when the victims are very like roughed up because he likes to put them back together. All right. And he wants that. He asked about the burn victim and if he's alive or not so he can actually put him back together and make him look presentable. And Dan's like, well, you know, he's still alive and everything. All right. But he's like, hey, is it possible that he could have been burnt somewhere else and then placed at that crash scene to make it look like a cover-up? All right. And then he's like, and then Dobbs starts to think about it a little bit. And then when he's thinking about it, the Dan gets a call saying they found another body. And then Dan and Dobbs both go out to the other body that's in the boatyard, that boatyard body. And now they both agree that this had to be the body from before that was in the car had to both be a cover-up. And they both kind of agree about that. So now Dan goes to meet with the hotel that was holding Freddy. Like that's where Freddy was staying, at the hotel. And the hotel guy was telling Dan like, yeah, I remember him kind of staying here, and he was going back and forth, not giving out all the stuff. And they look in his room, they could tell that he was a photographer. All right. Mm-hmm. And then the hotel guy remembered something. He was saying, oh, by the way, your wife Janet visited him. He's like, what? He's like, yeah, your wife visited him like a day or two ago. So now Dan is a little suspicious about his wife. Okay. So Dan talks with the wife about a little bit about the guy. And he's like, oh yeah, like he was selling photography stuff to the school. All right. And then another scene, Dan talks to the principal saying, oh yeah, we were thinking about getting for photography stuff, but the sale never happened. It never went through. So Dan's kind of like thinking like, okay, well, my wife said the sale definitely went through, and now the principal is saying the sale never went through at all. So what's going on here? Is she covering up something or is she not? We will see.
We will see.
So now Dan goes and visited Frank at the hospital. And not Frank. So Dan goes and visits Freddy at the hospital. And he's all burnt up. He can barely speak anything. And he's all talking about, like, he's talking to the doctor saying, like, hey, what can I just get a couple minutes with him alone? And the doctor pretty much gets him out of the room saying, like, this guy is badly burned. He can barely talk. He can't talk at all because he has no lips. All right. And this is when we have the same, right. He doesn't have any lips. How is he going to talk to you? All right. And then while they're talking, the same hot blonde from Playboy earlier, she comes in there and she does her best Dario Argento where she sticks a needle in his eye.
Yep. Eye gouging.
Kills his ass. All right. And then they come in there and then Dan and Seether and everything. So now they bury Freddy. Now, okay, Dobbs is kind of angry because he's like, hey, how come you didn't let me make him up? So Dobbs the whole time in this movie, he doesn't care if people die. He just wants to make them look good again. That's his gimmick. That's everything. If somebody dies in this film, he's like, okay, well, let me make him up. Let me redo him. Why are you burying him in a coffin? Why are you doing that? Let me make him up, then bury him. All right.
Right.
So he's pissed off about that. All right, and then this is when Dan's saying, like, hey, man, I'm all pissed off because there's 2 murders happening in this very small town. I mean, come on, this is 1980s horror movies. When do any murders happen in a small town ever at all?
Never. Nothing bad ever happens in a small town. Yeah. Do you think very that, shocking. Other than the town you lived in now, have you ever lived in a small town before?
Not
or
really.
have you normally lived in big cities?
Mostly big cities, because even when I lived in Florida, I was still on the outskirts of Miami.
Right. So let me ask you what you think about this as a concept, since we have talked about this before, but I don't think I've ever mentioned this. So, I grew up in a small town, like John Mellencamp. And, and I also live in a small town now, like the song goes. But there is a reputation of that big cities are dangerous, and if you go to big cities, you're going to get mugged and raped and murdered and killed, and all these terrible things happen. So you should just stay in your small town because nothing bad ever happens in a small town, and we're all nice community people. We all care about each other, and nobody ever does anything bad. When in the reality, in most small towns, including this one, and including the one you probably live in, people out there, there is a dark undercurrent of things that you don't see in public, but there's a lot of really, really horrible, terrible things that happen in small towns on a daily basis. Do you think that that's kind of what these types of movies are speaking to? There's small towns are supposed to be safe, but in reality, they're just as dangerous in different ways as big cities are.
Yeah, I mean, I think, okay, so the 2 reasons I could think they use small towns in the horror movies is, number one, it's probably easier to film because when you think of big cities, you think of people walking around a bunch, and it's a lot of times it's harder to get those extras for those type of movies. And then number 2, it's also it's a small town, like you're saying, it's supposed to feel a little safer than the city or whatever. You get mugged and killed and stuff, and in the big cities and stuff, you don't get that in a small town. Everybody's all friendly and nice to everybody. But there's always supposedly because there's always been darker tones for smaller towns too. So that's why, they kind of use that for the movie. It's kind of like a psychology thing. He's like, oh yeah, we're just watching this film about a smaller town, and you think the smaller town's nice, but it's really not. It has a dark secret in it. And we've seen that in real life too.
Yes.
There's been many serial killers or mass murderers that came out of smaller towns and stuff. I think it's just a good gimmick to use for, like I said, budgetary purposes and to false sense of hope for smaller towns too. So
exactly.
Speaking of smaller towns, Dan's wife shows up, Janet, all in red. All right, she's going back to the house. Dan asks, "Where you been?" Huh? She's like, "Oh, I've been to PTA meetings."
Yeah.
I was like,
sure thing.
It's like, you're just
Liar.
mad. You're just mad because I didn't fix you fish sticks and beef stroll. Beef stroll.
Holy fuck. Really?
Yeah.
if I came to your house and you fixed me fish sticks, I would be like, "Are you fucking insane?" Like, like this makes me lose my mind. Like, holy shit. Okay, but anyway, continue.
Well, maybe Dan is big into fish sticks and beef stroll.
Maybe. All
right.
Jesus Christ, fish sticks.
So he's upset. All right, and he's like, okay, he's just saying, well, these murders are just getting into me because it's a small town, no murders ever happened. So she's like getting in everything. She's like, I'll get you, and they start hugging and they she said like, okay, well, can you do me a favor though? Can you drop off this film to Ernie's? And he's like, I just told you I'm upset and everything about these murders. You're gonna have me do a task? And she's like, yeah, I need you to do it because I gotta get out of here. I gotta go to more of these meetings. All right, so he's like, fine. So now the guy from the hotel, I believe his name is Ron, he goes to the gas station to fill up his car, and he notices that the guy at the gas station, okay, well, actually, hold on, before we get there. So we have a new family. Okay, the dad's name is Ron, and he needs to get gas and directions for his family. Okay, I was jumping the gun there for a second. Mm-hmm. So he needs to go ask the locals here at Porter's to ask about the some gas and where he can stay for some directions to get on out of here. So he goes into the diner where all the crazy townsfolk are in. They all look at him for a little bit and they go back to their business. He asked if they can give him some coordinates or where to go to this campsite. And then while he's getting all this information, the family comes in anyway because the little man needs to pee. And then they ask him what he wants, and he wants ice cream. All right. So they're all trying to go to the Freddy. So now they're all like, hey, can we get some gas? And we notice that the new gas attendant guy is actually Freddy. He has been reanimated, and he's given a new job.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a different kind of zombie, right? So like he's reanimated and now he works at the gas station. Yeah. Sorry, I can't say it without laughing.
Was it an upgrade? I don't know. Maybe.
So the zombies are given jobs and this one works at the gas station. Okay, yes. Here we go.
Yeah, pretty much. So like we're seeing now that when you die at the Porter's town or the Porter's Ocean Island, you die and they give you a job, which it's nice.
So,
you know what I mean?
So far, they're all people from outside town, right? They're not locals.
Yeah, that have died so far. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, no. The drunk boat guy was a local.
Oh yeah, and they reanimated him. So yeah, okay, all right.
So now Ron can't see. They got the directions. They're trying to get to the gas, and Ron can't see because it's too foggy out here. So he crashes a little bit. All right, the kid hits its head. He's hurting a little bit. Then this random light appears. All right, and then Ron and his wife start fighting about the light because she saw the light, he didn't see the light. They start fighting about it. They go to this house, they unlock the door, they start looking all around the house, they're trying to find the light, they keep arguing about the light as well too. And, a couple of the doors scare them a little bit. Wife is annoying, she says she for sure saw this light in here. They're getting stalked. And then Ron goes to the basement and the wife waits upstairs. So he's looking through the fridge, all right, and he can't find anything. And he's walking throughout the house, and we can see that the townsfolk is now starting to stalk them. And eventually they start attacking them now, and they start running out of the house, and they're trying to get back into the car, all right. And one of the zombie town folks gets on top of the car. And they're doing like a chase with her, and we could see that when they ripped part of her hair off, it was coming off a little bit. It was kind of melting off. All right, and they get the girl off the window, but she still stays on the car, so she starts attacking it. All right, and then they crash. All right, and we don't really know what happened to him after that. So while this is happening, Dan is going to go, get the film dropped off. And he runs over this townsfolk guy, okay? And he kind of ran over his arm. And then the townsfolk guy runs away, and Dan tries to follow him, but he loses them. And then he goes back and he sees that he got, the arm came off the person too. And he thought that was really weird. So Dan, he drops off the film and he gives it to Ern, says like, hey, I'm dropping off this film, but the only person who can see this is me. Nobody else can see this. All right. And then he goes back home. He looks through his wife's stuff and he finds witchcraft books in his wife's stuff. I was like, what's the problem? Got a bunch of that shit laying around the house. But Dan's freaked out saying, what's all this witchcraft stuff doing here? She's like, well, I got to teach the kids something. They don't pay attention to me at all. He's like, you're teaching the witchcraft stuff to the kids? He's like, yeah. And then she asked him about, go ahead.
Does she just say, yeah? Like, so she's like a tarot card reader.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not an expert in any of this shit, but I don't know if a tarot card reader would necessarily say, yeah, this is witchcraft. But anyway, I guess she did. So anyway, moving on.
Well, he did find a dagger in there. He found a witchcraft book and dagger. And his big thing is
that's true. I forgot about that. He did find the book.
So he's kind of suspicious of his wife, but the wife's like, well, this is just for my class. This is like a special history thing I'm teaching.
Yeah.
To get their attention because they like it.
So I'm wondering, how long have these people been together? Does he is this just new stuff for her? Well, we find out why, but this is new stuff for her, I don't know. It seems like he just doesn't really know her very well at all.
Not really. No.
Maybe, you know what I mean? Maybe that, maybe they just didn't show the change in her, but she seems like the same person through the whole movie. And he acts like he just doesn't really know her very well.
Yeah. So now, it doesn't seem like they know each other too well. It's kind of he's figuring out stuff about her little by little.
Yes.
So now Dobbs, all right, and Dan, they're talking about Ron. So they said they found our family dead, okay, and that's when Ron and his family. They didn't show Ron and his family dying. But at this thing, they said they're basically dead right now. They're dying. All right. But they don't. And then Dobbs is pissed off because he wanted the bodies to make up the faces. That's this whole gimmick of this movie was him just wanting to make up dead people's faces the whole time. He didn't care if they died, how they died, whatever. He just wants to make up their faces. And when you tell him, nah, bro, you can't do that. We're just going to bury him. He gets pissed off. That's his whole gimmick out of this whole movie.
Well, yeah. So this is kind of weird too. So that is kind of what a mortician does. So when a person dies, a dead body doesn't really look, they lose color and things like that. So they don't really look like you remember them looking. So one of the jobs of a mortician is to kind of put makeup on the person to make them look more like the family remembers.
Yeah.
But this guy seems overly obsessed with putting makeup on corpses.
All right, he loves it. So now they argue a little bit about the first, body looking like an accident and everything. And this is when we get young Freddy. He's pulling out the Ford car that came out of the liver. That was pretty much from Ron and his family. So we see that on here. And then we see Dan. He's now taking the sample that he got off his car. That little skin tissue sample, he took it to the police officer to test it for human skin to see who this person was, the DNA. He wants to test the DNA on it. So Dan tells. So Dan now runs into Ben, the guy from the gas station, the hotel, and he says hey, the guy who was in my hotel checked in that was dead in the car. He is now working at the gas station. All right. And Dan's Sheriff Dan's listen, bro, I got all this shit going on. I got my wife's crazy. She has witch cards. There's all these dead bodies showing up. Are you sure you saw him? Are you sure? I'm not going to chase the wild goose chase over here. All right. So Dan's not believing. And then then the Ben guy is super, he's oh yeah? Well, why don't you go ask your wife about it then? It's damn.
Ooh.
Fuck. He got him there. So Dan goes to visit his wife, and his wife is teaching the kids witchcraft. That's metal.
That is super metal.
That is pretty metal. So Dan brings Janet to the gas station. All right. And he has the Freddy check the hood. All right. And they kiss a little bit. And the wife doesn't really say at all if it was the, Freddy from or not. They just kind of just, she uses her charm on Dan to kiss him. Okay. So we get like this random hitchhiker girl. Mm-hmm. This was random. All right. So we get like this young, like 18 to 20-year-old hitchhiker girl talking to an old.
I love how you can accurately guess ages like that. It makes me wonder about your past. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, I mean, she looked like it. You know what I mean? 18 to 20, okay. I guess.
Yeah, sure thing. Go ahead.
She's a hitchhiker girl randomly, and she needs to hitchhike. And she gets stopped by an old creepy dude saying, "Hey, I'm old and creepy. Yeah. Are you sure you want to come in this car with me? Because remember, I'm old and creepy." And she's like, "Oh yeah, sure, no problem."
Absolutely.
Thanks for telling me you're old and creepy. So I'll just get in this car with you because you already established that you're old and creepy. So that means you can't be old and creepy. Okay. So guess what? The guy was old and creepy, and he was part of the townsfolk that like to kill people, and then they kill her, and they take photos of her. I was like, okay, thank you. And they killed her. They killed her with a rock, brother.
Yeah, smash her head.
So now, this is another one. So now Dobbs is burying the girl, right? And Dobbs like, well, what the hell are you doing over here? She was a lovely girl. Why didn't you have me make her up before you put her in the grave? And I was like, damn, again? Shit, well, this guy just shows up.
Again with his makeup.
Again, okay? All right, so now Dan, he doesn't know what the fuck's going on here at all. He's like, why are all these fucking dead bodies happening in this small town? He's like, I'm not getting any sleep over here. I just don't know what's happening, okay? And so he eventually, Dan agrees. He's like, okay, just make her up. So this is when we get Dobbs, and now he is making up this hitchhiker girl. This is when we get that really cool special effect of like we see her dead, and then she's like slowly morphing into what she looked like before. And he was all saying, "This is going to be my masterpiece. This is going to be my best, creation that I've done." And then Dobbs leaves the room. Another person comes in, and then the dead girl awakes, probably because of the voodoo dead witch magic.
Exactly.
So Zombie 4 is coming back. So we have the doctor is now, the doctor is now calling Dan about the evidence that he found from that sample from his car. And he's all like, hey man, I don't know what this is, but this flesh has been dead for 3 to 4 months. So he's like, are you sure this is like not for somebody that, got your car earlier? He's like, no, this happened yesterday and stuff. And then Dan's like, man, he must be wrong. Like, I don't know what's going on. All right. So now the same doctor who checked on the blood sample is now playing with acid. Okay. And he's checking on the sample again. And then he realizes, oh shit, this is going to be the plot for Reanimator in a couple years. All right.
Yes.
And then he gets killed by the townsfolk, and they pour acid on his fucking. I guess this is why I got banned in London, because they tube him with a bunch of acid, and his face like explodes or melts. I thought that part was super cool. Yes. I thought that part was really cool. So now he's gone. The doctor is now gone. Okay. So now Dan sees Dobbs at the office. All right. As Dan comes in for the morning, Dobbs reports, he's like, listen, I got to do something that's very embarrassing. I have to report a missing body. And Dan's like, what the fuck are you talking about? It's like, he's like, that girl that came in here, I made up her face, that she's gone. All right. She's like, I can't find her. All right. And Dan is like, okay, I'm not really sure what's going on here. And he's like, okay, well, they're going back and forth about all the weird stuff that's happening in the town. And then Dobbs says like, well, Janet, she came over to visit me yesterday. And then Then Dan was all like, well, is it you the one that's been putting all that witchcraft stuff in her head? So they start arguing back and forth a little bit about dead coming back to life. And then Dan's like pretty much saying, I'm not really sure what to believe right now when it comes to this. So Dan doesn't know if it's somebody taking the bodies or if he doesn't know if it's some witchcraft and people are getting reanimated. He doesn't know what's going on right now.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And of course, Betty, his receptionist, was running late. All right, she shows up and she says, like, okay, well, we're about to have the one of the bodies, George, who is the Freddy guy. We're about to have his body transferred. Okay. And then basically Dan wants to figure this out. He's like, okay, well, maybe if I look at the grave of the Freddy George, maybe we can, I can figure it out. Like if this guy is like running around or not, or if he's the guy from the gas station or not. So Dan goes to the graveyard, all right, to try to dig up the body. The other guy is like saying like, the guy, there's like not the mortician, but the gravekeeper guy didn't want to do it, but then they decided to do it. So before Dan digs up the grave, he's looking for Dobbs. Dan's looking like, I guess he said the Dobbs, he's asking where Dobbs is to go talk to him some more. Yeah, so basically, like I said, Dan was like forcing him to dig up the body, but the guy didn't want to. And Dan, he wants to figure out where Dobbs is. I guess he wants to ask him some more questions about, where this missing body is. And so basically, Dan's trying to open up this coffin that was George's coffin. He does it. He cracks it open and stuff, and he doesn't find anything inside. All he finds is a heart. A
heart wrapped up in clothing.
Like clothing, yes. So Dan now takes pictures of George, the guy, and then he tells Betty to go see if like this. He wants to do some research about Dobbs because he doesn't really trust Dobbs of what he was saying. So he wants to see, he tells Betty to go give some details if Dobbs has a criminal record anywhere else. Okay? And he also says to send pictures to the local police station as well, too. So now this is when Dan finally picks up that film that his wife Janet gave it to him. He only paid $5.40. All right? So we see that there's like this film. So when he tries to watch the film, we can see that there's a film of like the townspeople and there's a girl in the bed. So we're seeing clips of that. Go ahead.
Right. Yeah. As I say, he picks up the film from the developer.
Yes.
Which you just mentioned. Yeah. And this is going to be his big clue to find out what's going on.
So now, he runs to the doctor outside, and now we could tell that the doctor got reanimated. Okay, he's at Walking Dead now, but Dan's not too sure about it. All right, and he's asking about the sample from yesterday. All right, and he's like, "Well, I didn't really find anything else with the sample too much." So now, when basically, so Dan's pretty much trying to like put the pieces together, and he was watching that film. And we could basically see it's kind of like a snuff film in a way because you have all these townspeople there. You can see a girl basically stab somebody while she puts them in the bed. Okay? And while he's watching this film, he can see that the girl who stabbed it was his wife, Janet. And he's like, oh shit. So now he's going to go corner Dobbs. Okay? And we can see that Dobbs is now in his super villain lair. All right? With all the TVs around him and everything. And Dan is confronting Dobbs about this, and then this is when Dobbs goes into, basically say what he's been doing this whole time is he's been killing the town. He killed a bunch of the townsfolk, and he basically reanimated them to be better than what they are right now. All right, and he was saying that Janet was pretty much his greatest creation. Because she came out like the prettiest. All right. And
Yes.
yeah, and they're going off. He was showing them a bunch of pictures and everything about it. And this is when Dan is like attacking Dobbs now. He's going to like attack him. And then Janet comes in, and Janet finally realizes that she's dead now after Dan was talking to her about it. And now she just wants to be buried. All right. So during when this happened, it seems like Dobbs wants Dan to kill him because Dobbs wants to turn into his own creation. So I'm not really sure how you do that.
Yeah, I thought this part was really strange. Like the ending part was really strange, where he like kind of wants to be a reanimated corpse because they're better. He made them better.
Well, you know what it kind of reminds me of? Speaking of Dragon Ball Z. Remember when he had Dr. Moreau? I forgot his name. The android doctor guy from the Red Ribbon Army. He made him...
the one that created Cell.
Yeah, the one that created Cell and the android 17 and 18 and 16. You know, all androids more powerful than himself. Okay?
Right.
But he made himself an android. But I was like, well, how the fuck do you do that? Like, do you just like kill yourself? And like, if you're dead, how are you going to work on yourself?
Right, and that's the problem this guy's running into as well.
Yeah.
Like, he wants to become reanimated, but nobody else. Once he dies, nobody else can do the dark sciencey stuff for him.
I don't know. So he's trying to figure it out some way. All right. So now we have. So Dan is trying to go after Janet now because she wants to be buried. All right. He's like yelling for Janet. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, like Dobbs is, you know, I guess he gets shot, but he does get back up. So maybe he already gave himself some voodoo magic. That's the only thing I could think of. All right. So I thought this part was semi-funny. So Janet goes to where George was supposed to be buried, you know, Freddy, where he was supposed to be buried. And all it did was it crossed out George's name and put Janet's name there. I thought that was pretty funny.
I know, that was amazing. That was great.
So she wants to be buried. All right. Dobbs is now getting reincarnated. All right. Or he's playing he's playing out his music. All right. He's playing his oldie music now. I guess that's how he does it. So Don now buries Janet while crying. All right. And Dobbs is now make-upping himself really bad. That's what I put. He's like putting lipstick on himself and everything.
Yeah, he's starting to do the technique on himself while he's alive.
So now the other dead townsfolk is all showing up and stuff, and they start all chasing Dan after he gives flowers to Janet's grave. And apparently it's like the whole town. Like the whole town has been animated. Dan now realizes like everyone he knows is dead or is a corpse. All right.
Yeah.
So he's like, oh, fuck this. So he's trying to. So he goes back to where Dobbs is, and he's trying to get away from everybody. And he goes back to Dobbs. I put Dobbs' creation room. All right. And then we get a swerve where Dobbs, all made up in his dead grave zombie outfit, Dobbs shows Dan that it was him who Janet killed in the snuff film. All right. And then Dan looks at his hands and saying they're falling apart. And of course, that Dobbs is like, I can fix those. I can fix those for you.
Yeah, I can fix those for you. That was a great line.
So I liked it. I liked the swerve at the end. I thought that was good.
So Gillis was also dead. So this was like a typical, like, everyone in the town is in on it except one person movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, like everyone in the town, like Gillis was the only person that had no idea what was going on.
Yeah, but I guess because I'm not sure. Maybe he was. I guess because he was animated to be the sheriff. Maybe they didn't want him to. Maybe Dobbs was just playing around the whole time. Like all these dead townsfolk were like his puppets. And he was just playing around with them the whole time. And maybe he needed Dan to be not in on it, so he could play out his game, so he can turn into his witchy dead corpse as well too.
I guess so.
So,
but yeah, I really actually like this movie. I'd never seen this before. Like we've been talking about doing this movie since almost since we started talking about doing the show.
Yeah.
And 3 years ago coming up, 4 years ago coming up, and I bought this on Blu-ray years ago, but I just never got around to watching it until now. So I'm glad I did. This is a good film. Good movie.
Yeah, definitely really good. And I liked the take that they did on Zombie. It was more about like recreating them for this mad mortician's witchcraft hobby.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Because I get tired of I'm so tired of zombie movies in general, especially the ones that are just like dead people coming back from the grave, you shoot them in the head and they die. That kind of thing.
So
it's kind of cool to see something different.
Yeah, very interesting. I liked it. I thought it was and I liked the swerve at the end with Dan not knowing he was an actual reanimated corpse too. Janet, you can kind of feel throughout the whole movie that she was in on it.
Something was off with her. Yeah.
Yeah. So very interesting. Very, very interesting. So, but everybody, that is Dead and Buried, starting off this From the Grave month here on the Retro Blood. But join us here next week as we continue this wild roller coaster of a Dead and Buried animated Dead Things month, because we are talking a very fun movie, which I cannot wait to talk about. Night of the Creeps.
Yes. What a classic.
Tom Atkins' is back, brother.
Ooh, yeah.
We got killer slugs. We got teenagers. All right. We got proms. We got flamethrowers. We got everything on this next one. It's going to be very fun.
It's going to be fantastic.
And for this month, that's not all you get, because me and Alison have a bunch of other zombie buried dead things coming up for you, because I believe we agreed to do. So we got this one, Dead and Buried. We got Night of the Creeps, and what was the third one?
Burial Ground.
Burial Ground.
Yeah.
All right. And to finish off the month, we are going back to a classic, because we're going to be doing 1985's Day of the Dead.
Yeah, because we didn't do it last year on the zombie month, so we're doing it this year.
Exactly. And I'll finish out that. So yeah, it should be a fun month. I'm looking forward to it, everybody. So, but Alison, what from Anvil are we going to be playing with everybody on the YouTube?
Let's play the classic second track from Hard and Heavy, AC/DC.
Oh, AC/DC, brother. Don't copyright me.
No, don't copyright me, bro.
Come on now. Yeah, I can see our boy Dan. You know, he is not like Dobbs. Dobbs only plays like the classical creepy music. Dan is more of he's more of the AC/DC, Anvil guy. He's ready to rock and roll, man. He found out he's dead. He's like, well, I'm fucking up everybody now. All right.
Yep.
It's gonna happen. But everybody, James Kline and J.A. we will see you here next week for Night of the Creeps. See y'all later.
See you guys.